Welcome to this video about the after-sales process. In this video, we're going to talk about the following topics. Number one, how does the after-sales process work? What should your mindset be when you deal with customers? And finally, what are the most common issues after sales? We're going to talk about what to do in case of late delivery, and we're also going to look at what to do when the buyer doesn't like your item and wants to return it. To show you how the after-sales process on eBay works, I want to go back to our example of seller Kizo from Kazakhstan. Once you get an order, you get notified by eBay via email that you have an order and you're asked to come to the platform. So what do you do when you get this email? Well, you're going to log in to eBay, you're going to go to your seller hub, and you're going to navigate to where the orders are. Here, you will be able to see all the orders that you've received, and you can call up the order details by clicking here on the order number. So your job now is simply to ship the item. So what you're going to do is you're going to note the address details, ship the item out, and afterwards you have to tell eBay that you have shipped the item. The way to do this is to find your order, and you can either add the tracking number from your carrier. So let's assume you have shipped via DHL. So you can select DHL as a carrier, and you can enter your tracking number from the carrier and then click save and continue here. If you don't have a tracking number, don't worry. You can simply navigate to the order in question, go to the drop down here, and then you can find mark as shipped right here. Once you've shipped your item, for now there's nothing else to do. You just wait until the customer gets the item, and hopefully the buyer will leave you a positive feedback. But if you see that the buyer does not give you positive feedback, you have the possibility to click here on contact buyer, and you can ask them in a friendly way if they are willing to provide feedback, because this is really important for your reputation. The other thing you can do to try and incentivize the buyer to leave a feedback for you is you can actually leave a feedback for the buyer yourself. So you can click on here, and once the buyer paid, you can just use a feedback like one of these, something like great communication, a pleasure to do business with. And once you send this to the buyer like this, they will see this, and hopefully they will also leave you a feedback. Let me briefly summarize. Step number one, the buyer pays for the item, you get the notification, you go to eBay, you get the address details, ship out the parcel, and in the eBay system you either enter the tracking number or you mark the item as shipped. Afterwards, you just wait for a while. Once the parcel arrives with the buyer, let's see if they give you positive feedback. If not, you have the possibility to reach out to the buyer and ask them to give you some feedback. So let's talk a little bit about the mindset you should adopt when dealing with customers. In general, your customer is king. So the customer already paid you, so you owe them. You should see the customer as someone who's valuable and is likely to buy again from you. So you should try to maintain a good relationship. Also, you should be aware that the customer, they expect you to deliver on your promises. So you have to ship on time and you have to ship the right items. Otherwise, they might lose patience very quickly. But a customer is also a human being, right? And they usually also respond empathetically if you communicate friendly. So if you have an issue, be transparent about it, be honest about it, and in most of the cases, your buyers will understand and will be ready to find a compromise with you. So what are the most common issues in the after-sales process? Well, the first one is late delivery. The second one is that the buyer doesn't like the item and wants to return it. So let's discuss the late delivery case. This is a case that I've seen quite frequently. And of course, when you ship cross-border, late delivery can be an issue because the postal service is not always as quick as they promise. But there are a few key things that you need to know. The first one is your customer, they don't care that it's the fault of the postal service. If something's late, you are the one who promised to deliver in a certain time, and they trust you to deliver on your promise. So you are always ultimately responsible, and it will hurt your reputation even if it's not your responsibility. Secondly, anytime there is an issue with late shipment, the most important is that you are upfront and honest, and that you manage expectations with your buyers. And then finally, there is usually a way to negotiate with the buyer in case they are upset, and there is a possibility to give them a partial refund. I want to now talk through a real world example with you based on the example of Kiso. So this is the seller Kiso, and in last December we had quite a lot of shipments, and this was in the pre-Christmas season. And as it happens in the pre-Christmas seasons, the postal service operates slower than usual. So we had indicated that we could ship in roughly 2 weeks, but it would actually take about 3 weeks to arrive. And we had a number of customers that were not quite happy that their parcel would arrive late. So I want to give you an example of a communication with a buyer and how to manage things when your parcel is delayed. So we have one of the customers here on December 5th that sends the following message. She says, "I have not received my order yet. I paid on November 6th. According to the tracking information, I was supposed to get the item by 23rd of November. Tracking information also says the order was being prepared to ship in November. Do you know when I will get the slippers?" I think the seller did a really good job here at responding to the buyer. She is on the one hand explaining why the delays are happening. She's asking if the parcel has arrived by now. And she's also saying that she will do her best to find a resolution that is mutually agreeable. So already signaling to the buyer that in case they are not happy, we are willing to make a step towards them. Now, as I mentioned, in most cases, the buyers, will respond in a friendly manner, and that's the case here as well. So the buyer is saying, "Okay, I understand the situation you're in. As of today, I have not received the slippers, but I will wait for another week, and I will contact you again," right? And the seller immediately responded, "Thank you so much. You will get them." And the great thing is that after a week, the buyer then responded and say, "Hey, my slippers were delivered a few days ago. I love them. Thank you." So this is what we like to see. Unfortunately, not all buyers are as patient and friendly as this one. In my experience, I would say probably about in 5% of the cases, you have a buyer that's really unhappy, and they basically say that they are, really not willing to wait any longer, and they want a refund. And so in this case, what you can do is you can start a negotiation, and you can see if they will accept a discount on it. And this is what I want to show you now. So here is an example of a message, how I would send it. Basically, you start by apologizing about the delay in delivery. You take responsibility for it. You then, if possible, give them an update on where the parcel is if you have a tracking number. And then you make a step towards them, and you tell them that you understand that this causes an annoyance, and that you're willing to find a resolution. And I would recommend that you just ask them what would be a reasonable discount for you. If you act this friendly and professional, usually the buyer will have no reason to ask for a full refund. Typically, buyers have been asking for maybe a discount of between 25 and 50%. And, it always depends on the case. If the delay is severe, then I think it's justified if you give them a good discount. If it's only a few days, then the discount can be smaller. But in any case, if you have a difficult buyer, it's better to reach an agreement and give them a discount. Otherwise, what can happen is that they will simply give you a negative feedback, and this will be really, really bad for your reputation. And, because in the scenario we're discussing, we have a late shipment, and it is your responsibility, and you have not you have not been honoring your promise, it is the buyer's right to give you a negative feedback. So therefore, I advise you to take the compromise. As I said before, this only happens in maybe 5% of the cases. Okay, so let's assume you've agreed on a discount. For example, you're going to give them a 30% discount. So how do you do that? First, you're going to find your orders. Then you can click on the order details again. And here on the blue button, you can go to the drop down and you can select the refund option down here. So you want to send a refund. And what we're going to do is, so we can select the reason. So for example, it could be, in this case, another adjustment. So in this case, we're going to offer it to them for about 30% off. So that would correspond to about $16. So the refund amount would be around $8. And you can then click on Review Refund. Okay, now let's talk about the second scenario. The scenario where the buyer received the item, but they don't like it and they want to return it. So in this example, we had a buyer from California who ordered a pair of slippers, and they arrived on time, everything was fine. But then when the buyer tried the slippers on, she found that they didn't fit, and she asked for a refund. So what can you do in this case? What you do will mainly depend on your returns policy. On eBay, you have the possibility to say that you offer no returns, but I never recommend that because when buyers don't have the option to return, they don't even do the purchase in the first place. So most of the time, what I recommend is that we give the buyer the option to return the item, but if they want to return it, the shipping cost is on the buyer. And the final option you have as a seller is to offer free returns. So that means the buyer can just return the item if they don't like it, and you have to pay for the return shipping. A lot of sellers do it these days as an incentive to get people to buy more, and it usually makes sense financially because the reality is that most buyers actually never return the item, even if they are not quite happy with it. So there's only a small percentage that is being sent back, and in our case, this is also what we are doing. We are offering free returns just to incentivize more purchases. So let's briefly summarize. We have a buyer in California. She received the slippers. She thinks they are not the right size. She's not quite happy and she wants to return them. And we would have now to pay for the return shipping. But actually, there is no financial sense to pay for the return shipping. So what the seller did in this case is to, again, offer a partial refund to the buyer and see if she's willing to just keep them and get a little bit of money back. I want to have a look at the conversation that happened between the buyer and the seller. In this case, it started with a return request from the buyer, and then the seller did the right thing. She's basically saying, hey, can I offer you a 50% discount? And just keep it. You don't have to send it back. The buyer said, yes, that will be okay, thank you. And then again, she explains like the shoes were too wide for me. Perhaps in the future, can you make them not so wide? Sorry, I really like them. So actually she liked them, but they're too big. And then, the seller said, okay, I will do the refund right now. And now we have a situation where basically the buyer is okay. And for us, we didn't have to spend a whole lot of money for the return shipment. And also we are sure to have a happy customer. And it's very likely that this customer will come back in the future and buy more from us. So the final common issue that I want to talk about is what do you do when a buyer leaves a negative feedback? So there are essentially two scenarios here. The first scenario is where you did something wrong, you shipped late, or you shipped the wrong item, or you shipped the wrong size. In this case, the buyer has a right to not be happy, and they have a right to leave a negative feedback. In my experience, in most cases, whenever you offered to give part of the money back to the buyers, they completely changed their mind about you, and they then also were happy to remove the negative feedback. So buyers can always have a few days after the purchase to remove a negative feedback. So make it right with the buyers. In most of the cases, the negative feedback will go away. The second scenario is when you receive a negative feedback from a buyer, but you didn't do anything wrong. You shipped on time, you shipped the right item, and you're just unlucky. I have not seen this happen frequently. I think I've seen 1 or 2 occasions, and I've seen hundreds of sales. So this really doesn't happen frequently. But if something like this happens, you always have the possibility to report the buyer to with eBay. So you can go to eBay's customer service team and you can open a case against the buyer. And if you have proof that you did everything correctly, then eBay will take care of removing this negative feedback for you. So I hope you never have to do that, but in case you have to report a buyer, what you can do, you can go back to your orders here and then find the order in question, and you can go to the drop down and you can click here on report a buyer, and eBay will then ask you what went wrong. Did the buyer misuse the return? So maybe they returned the wrong item. There can be multiple things. If you then select that and submit it, the eBay team will look at it, and there will be possible consequences for the buyers. The good news is that on a platform like eBay, people that are not honest, they get recognized very quickly and filtered out very quickly. So in most of the cases, the buyers that are on eBay, they are good people, they are honest, and it's really, really seldom that you run into bad buyers. So hasn't happened to me very frequently, maybe once or twice. I hope it never happens to you. But yeah, if it happens, you know what to do. You can report it to eBay. Okay, let's briefly summarize. So in this video, we talked about the after-sales process. We looked at the most common issues in after-sales, like late delivery, and what happens when the buyer doesn't like the item. And we also talked about the mindset that you should adopt when you deal with the customers. So always make sure that you communicate in a friendly manner. Always make sure that you manage expectations with the customer. And your customer is king, so treat them well. And in most of the cases, they will also treat you back well. This is it for the video. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.